Hello, YouTube family. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about why it is important to heal. So in my last video, we talked about how to glow up from the inside out, and one of the ways to glow up was to heal. Now we're going to break that down a little bit, and we're actually going to talk about the reason behind healing, right? And why everybody, well, not everybody, but why it's become such a trend in this day and age. And I've listed a few reasons. So without further ado, let's get into it. Let me get comfortable. Let me get comfortable, guys. Let us get comfortable. One of the reasons it's important to heal is that healing brings you closer to who you really are, right? So when you're born, all this stuff is put on you. You are given a name. You are basically given an identity, right? You are given values. You are given a religion if you come from a religious family. And you go to school, and then teachers further impart their conditioning on you, and then before you know it, it's like society has conditioned you. So you become this product of society and you lose touch with who you really are. Now, the problem with that is, yeah, one, you lose touch with who you really are, but then you also never get to connect with what you are really doing here, like your purpose on this planet. And you end up living this unconscious life, right? We end up living from our wounded self, and we end up living from basically who society tells us to be, right? And so healing provides you with that opportunity to shed all these layers, right? And excuse my French, but all this bullshit conditioning that society has laid upon us, right? So when you are born, you've heard like when a newborn is born, and there's people that are like, oh my god, such a pure bundle of joy, like that is who you are, like a pure bundle of joy. But then as we grow up, we start to forget that. And when you heal, you start to come back to that essence of who you are, that pureness of who you are. Because the fact of the matter is, we are all divine beings living in this impermanent human body, right? And we're here essentially to ultimately come back to that knowing of who we truly are. And because we are divine beings, we all have a divine purpose. And so if you don't go on that healing journey, you might never really find that divine purpose. And, you reincarnate again until you eventually, hopefully, find that divine purpose. The second reason why it is important to heal is that when you start to heal, you start to dismantle your belief systems, right? So it's a process of unlearning who you were told to be, who you were conditioned to be, and learning and becoming who you are really meant to be. So we all have a belief system, right? And most of our belief systems were formed, from our conditioning, and they were formed from the traumas that we have experienced. For example, a belief system that I carried for the longest time was that being black was wrong, right? Obviously, growing up in a time where like you would rarely see black women on TV, and if you would, they would not be represented in the greatest light. And subconsciously I carried this belief that like there was something wrong with me because of how I looked. And because of that belief system that I carried, I just never felt like I was enough. I never felt like I was enough in my friendships. I never felt like I was enough in my relationship. And the interesting thing about that, it was it was such a deep rooted belief that I didn't consciously know that that was actually what I believed. I mean, there were conscious moments of me thinking that, I wish I had my hair was a lot more straighter, and I wish my eyes were a lot more lighter. Like I wish, I had blue, green eyes. But for me, that was just kind of like I just thought I just wanted those things. I didn't think that I wanted those things because I hated myself. Another belief system that I had was how my body looked. I'm a very curvaceous woman. um, but back in the day that I was like growing up, being thin was the in thing. And so I just thought, I just hated myself, y'all. To sum it all up, I just really hated myself. And that's the belief system that I had. But as I started to heal all of this, then everything started to make sense. The relationships that I had, they started to make sense. Like, because you attract what you are. Like the people that you attract into your life are there to be a mirror, right? And also realizing that, oh my gosh, I didn't love myself. And so when that knowledge, that deep rooted belief system came to light, I was able to like work with it and heal it, right? Because you can't really, it's really hard to heal something if you don't know the roots of it. Like healing, guys, it is a long process, and it's a lot. It really is a lot, but it is honestly one of the most important journeys you can ever take in your life. And so, yes, as I mentioned before, healing is a process of unbecoming, unlearning, and then becoming. So I went through having to unlearn those belief systems because, everything that we tell ourselves, it is a story, right? You can literally change a story. Like you can literally change your belief system. There's nothing that says you have to, and as much as society tries to tell us this, like there's nothing that says that you have to hold on to a certain belief system. Like you can literally just decide and choose to let it go, right? And it can be hard to let it go because when you've held on to a belief system for so long, you become comfortable with it. And it requires a certain level of being uncomfortable to actually let it go. So healing teaches you how to be uncomfortable with how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And you're going to go through this process of just feeling a little bit kind of lost because you're letting go of the old belief system, but you haven't quite stepped into that new version of um, that embodies the new belief systems that are like much more positive and support who you really are. So there can be this feeling of just like lostness, and so it's like a spiritual awakening, and if any of you know, like spiritual awakenings are not easy because you're just kind of like you experience this shock of like, oh my gosh, everything I've ever known is a lie. Like, what is this? Like, who am I? And that can be very shocking, right? But once you get to the other side, like you just flourish, and you are so much more well off because you know the truth about yourself, or at least you're getting closer to the truth about yourself. Now, this one took me a while, guys, but the third reason why healing is so important is that it really gives you that opportunity to stop identifying with your past self, to stop identifying with the things that happened to you in the past, to stop identifying with our trauma. Yes, what happened to us, it happened to us, and it is um, really the reason why we are who we are. But it can be so easy to identify with the traumas in our past and to live your life identifying with that. And I will give an example. So, when I was little, my parents got a divorce, and my dad was never really in the picture. And fast forward to my early 20s, like teens, early 20s. um I just had daddy issues. I was just a girl. I had daddy issues, and all in all aspects, I had daddy issues. Like, I would attract the wrong type of guys that would always leave me, like my dad did. Um, but that is not the point. Like, we'll go more into my story as I continue to record these videos. But yeah, I identified with that. And so every man that I would meet, like on a deeper level, I would um I would sort of like know that they're gonna abandon me. And so yeah, I would attract guys that would abandon me because I hung on to that idea of, like, my dad did this, every man is gonna do that. Until and then I attract also the kind of guys that had the same personality as my dad. Um, but that for me was like, well, my dad's like this, so every guy's gonna be like this. And that was another belief system, right? So because I was identifying with that past, I would just manifest it in the present. And that's the thing. If you identify with your past, you just manifest it into your present, and you just manifest that into your future. And so as I was, on this healing journey, I discovered that I can actually let this shit go. I don't have to hang on to it. And the one thing that you really realize in your healing journey is that everything that happened for you, right? And it is not to excuse the shitty things that happened in your life. It is not to excuse the people that treated you badly. We're not going to even try to excuse them, because that's not what we're doing. But when you realize that, oh, like, all that stuff happened, and if it hadn't happened, I wouldn't be who I am. Like, if that didn't happen, I would not have this YouTube video that talks about, like, you know, healing and spirituality. Like, I'll probably have a YouTube videos, and I'd be vlogging about my life, which would be great. But because of how my life went, like, I felt called to um, help other people that have been through something similar, like I did, And so realizing that, what began the process of me forgiving my dad, and like me forgiving the people that have wronged me in the past, because I am stronger because of it. I went on this healing journey because of it. So in a weird, warped, twisted kind of way, I'm really grateful that it happened. And I wouldn't change a thing about it. Does that mean that I don't wish that I had a family that was together, and, like, I didn't go through the stuff that I didn't? Like, yeah, I wouldn't wish that on anybody else, and I just wouldn't wish it on my younger self. But also, I wouldn't change anything about it, because it made me who I am. And so, that helped me to let go of my past. I don't need to believe that I have daddy issues. You can just heal them, and, like, let it go, and create a new belief system. All right. The fourth reason why it's important to heal is that it allows you to get out of survival mode. Like, I was in survival mode for the longest time. At 20 years old, I ran away from home. At this point, I was living with my dad. So when I was in South Africa, um, my brother and I were living with my mom. And at the age of 16, we moved to Australia to be with my dad. So my dad was living in Australia. So up until that age of 16, I hadn't lived with my dad at all. And At the age of 16, started living with my dad. And you know what? My dad had all sorts of traumas that he had not worked on. And so he projected a lot on my brother and I. And it was just a toxic environment. So at 20 years old, I ran away from home and I was literally survival mode, guys. Like I was working and working and just working to pay the rent so I could eat. I had no point of direction at, that time. I was not connected to my purpose. Like literally all I was doing is making money so I could eat, so I wouldn't have to go back to the toxic environment. And so when you have no point of direction at all and you're living unconsciously and you're just trying to survive, that can be very hard. And at the time, because I didn't know a lot about trauma, and I wasn't really working on myself, I attracted more trauma because I was living from like my wounded self. And when you're living from your wounded self, like the wounded subconscious, you just attract more things that are going to wound you. It wasn't until I started going through the healing journey and understanding like why my life was the way it was and starting to understand that hey, I'm actually attracting all these like weird characters in my life that are just like causing me more trauma. And I wasn't just attracting toxic men. I was attracting like toxic friends. I was attracting like toxic bosses, like toxic housemates. Oh, guys, it's a whole cycle. Thank God, like I have kind of past that now, and I am on a um much more like in a much more safer space than I was. So, this was like years worth of like doing the healing work was slowly I began to attract less weird characters, and I found the spiritual path, which led me to yoga, which led me to guys, which led me to just wow, I'm so grateful to just amazing people and amazing situations, and ultimately to this beautiful amazing path, and to being on this platform in the way that I am now. And I could definitely say that I am not in survival mode anymore. Like, along my journey, I found my path, which is I really want people to realize that they are divine beings, that they are capable of healing and living their best lives, and finding the purpose, living that their highest purpose. The fifth and last reason why it is so important to heal. All of the reasons are my favorite reasons, but I feel like this last reason, you guys, has just been the cherry on top of the cake. And that is that you stop obsessing with being chosen and you choose you. You choose yourself. Because when we're not healed and we don't have that unconditional love for ourselves, we obsess so much with being validated. We don't feel beautiful until somebody tells us that we're beautiful. And I was that kind of person. If somebody told me I was beautiful, I was like, what? No, really? No, I don't think so. So they could tell me like a million times more. Because like, I really was just like, seeking that validation. And it's such a beautiful place to be when you actually been getting emotional right now because when you finally choose yourself, because you realize how like, worthy you are and how like, you've always been worthy. You've been I've always been worthy from the moment I was born, and somewhere along the line I convinced myself that I wasn't. And you return back to this place where you finally choose yourself. And you know what? I don't I don't need validation from someone else now because I give myself that validation. Yes, it's nice. It's nice to get validation. I'm a human being. It's nice to get validation. It's nice to feel loved, and like that's what we seek as human beings. It's just part of human nature. But I can proudly say that I am at a place now where I give that to myself wholeheartedly, and I can be alone. I can be in my loneliest era, and I can still feel so much love because I give it to myself, and God gives it to me, right? God is an all loving God, and God gives me that love. I give myself that love, and I never I can never go without it. And I know that now. And it's such a profound experience and such a beautiful place to be. I want this feeling for everyone. I feel like even when I record these videos, I'm really talking to young Neo, my younger self. I feel like when I was 16, I would have liked to hear somebody tell me these things. I would have loved it just would have helped me a lot. But I'm talking to you, little Neo, and I'm talking to anyone who needs to hear this. And if you're listening to this found you for a reason. Choose yourself, love yourself. You are worthy just because you exist. You don't need an external reason. And I want to leave you guys with this. Remember, you are your own guru. I am here to give you this knowledge to inspire you, but at the end of the day, you are the one that is left with the decision. Are you going to decide to go on this healing journey, or are you going to decide to stay where you are? And neither is wrong, right? Neither is wrong. It's just to choose how you want to exist in this world, how you want to show up. So you are your own guru. You can take the seeds and you can allow them to blossom, or the seeds will always be there. And that concludes this video. Thank you so much, guys, for listening to me. If you resonated with this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. Sending you all love.